This episode of the GSE Podcast is brought to you by Exceed Ground Support Equipment Leasing, your trusted partner for GSE solutions. We specialize in tailored operating leases for ground handlers and airlines, offering top-notch equipment in flexible terms to suit your needs. Partnered with the industry leaders like Charlatte America, we are committed to bringing you new equipment offerings that keep your operations running smoothly and efficiently. Choose Exceed for competitive rates and exceptional customer service. Visit exceedgsc.com today and soar to new heights with Exceed Ground Support Equipment Leasing. All right, we're live here in the second ever GSE podcast. I've got with me today Rob Lamb, the VP of Sales and Marketing for Charlatte America. Hey, what's up, Rob? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Matt. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to talking to you today. I would like to know why I was not selected as number one, but I guess we can talk about that at on another day, if you will.
Yeah, I think number two is pretty good, man. But, I think I've almost known you, as far as like people who are VP of sales for different companies. I think you're the second that I ever met, really. So I know I was originally with Tug, and we met shortly after that because you were my competitor at the time, working for Charlatte.
Yeah, was it down at the Memphis barbecue where we met down in the tent there? And
yes.
I put two and two together. I'm like, you're that guy.
Yeah.
And,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, man, it was wonderful meeting you. And I think you're one of those examples of just, there's 500 people in this fraternity of GSE that matters. And you're one and I'm one. And, we all get along.
Yeah. I think Brad told me when we were talking that I was 499. So I just made the cut. Which is super exciting for me. No, but I remember the same thing. So to give a little background here, I was the account manager for FedEx for Tug, and you were the account manager, or I imagine at that time you're still the VP of sales there as well for FedEx. And they invited both of us to join their barbecue competition, Memphis in May. And, I think it speaks a lot for the industry. Because, or just you, I'm not sure which, but, or maybe both, but we showed up and, like I said, we were competitors at the time, both calling on the same customer, and you were just so nice to me. And I was very green, right? I think I had been in the GSE for about a year, maybe less. And you were just so nice to me, even though, you were my competitor, and it was fantastic, man. And we've been friends ever since. And I really appreciate that and how nice you were to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're in sales or any kind of marketing, you're born with this gift, and that is reading people. And when I met you, I knew from the very beginning you and I were going to get along. Just body language, eventually the stories we told, and I've really appreciated the friendship ever since.
Yeah, man. And I didn't know if you were being nice to me because you were such a nice guy, or the fact that pretty sure I bought the keg of beer. So I wasn't sure if it was the keg that won you over or just my personality, but it could have been both. We don't know.
Yeah, a combination of both. And we're all smiling because we're eating some of that fantastic Memphis barbecue. So
I want to say we came in 19th overall that year in ribs, if I remember correctly.
However, the first year, and I'll get into my history in a minute, but the first year I was on the team, but I wasn't on the team. They would never let me, touch the barbecue, cook anything. Like you said, I think I might have been in charge of, procuring a few things here and there. And it was not a FedEx event, but several of the team members happened to work at FedEx or were retired from FedEx. Yeah, it was the first year, and it was 1997. And I was down there, and Ben Reeves had turned the account over to me. And I'll be darned, there's, God, I think, and it's probably still this way today, there's like 300 cooking teams. And you've got ribs, whole hog, pork shoulder, and other. And the team that I was on used to cook ribs. And there were like 120 teams doing ribs. And they would crown a champion for each category. So you had 4 champions. And then at the end, they would crown the grand champion. And the team that I was working with, they're called the other team. They won the grand championship that first year that I was there. So they're like, "Oh, Rob, maybe you're a good luck charm." I'm like, "No, I don't think so." Because after that year, I went for probably another 20 years and they never won it ever again. So but there you have it. They've placed high and this and that, but they have not won a grand championship. And from what I recall, it was a nice payout for those guys that actually ran the team and were technically on the team. So
can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Do you go around claiming that you are a barbecue like world champion to like your friends that really don't know the whole story?
You know what?
Because I would.
It depends on how gullible the person is.
Okay. All right.
But no, it did cost me some money because I felt like I then had to go get a green egg and learn how to do this and that. This temperature and that, and peel the back of the ribs, the membrane, and all that. So let's just say I'm the best at cooking barbecue on my street.
I got to tell you, I think we could have a barbecue podcast at this point.
Yeah,
I'm thinking we should maybe start that. And actually, I think it's the reason that I have a big green egg is because you got a big green egg. This is a funny story. So you got a big green egg, and then I imagine that Cliff Chapman got a big green egg. And then I went to Cliff's house, and I was like, I got to have one of those big green eggs. So I'm pretty sure that's how the story went. And so you're actually the reason that that I'm into barbecue as well. Look at that.
Well, and that sort of ties into to my background and how I got in this business. I got a green egg because Ben Reeves had a big green egg. So we'll go back here to the beginning of Rob Lamb's life. And that was, I was born in Metro Atlanta and ended up going to Auburn University and had a really good time over there. I can say this and be very proud of it. We'll show you how long ago it was. But when I was there, we never lost to Alabama. So
that is impressive.
I graduated in December of 1989. And it was funny back then. Everything was on the quarter system. I did not go to grad school, so I don't know what would have happened then, but I never, ever was on semesters. And
oh, see, I thought you meant the quarter system was quarter beers.
Oh,
is that not? Okay. I thought you just gave like somebody a quarter and they gave you a beer. That's not what you were talking about.
No. And don't make me do Auburn math,
Okay.
Figure out what a quarter of a beer is that equals, a 12-pack or a case.
Okay. Yeah. So you were at Auburn University and you all were on quarters.
Okay. So at Auburn, they were on the quarter system. And that was a wonderful thing because if you had a really bad quarter, which was exactly 10 weeks, you could make it up the next quarter. So to reference that, people at Auburn would say, "Are you graduating in the spring on time?" And I got to say, like many others, was, "No, I'm coming back for an extra football season," because school would start in the middle of September and it would end the first week of December. So yeah, I was there for an extra football season, graduated in 89, met my lovely bride there, Julie, who I've been married to for 31 wonderful years. So I'm 2 years older than her. So when I graduated from Auburn, I worked at a local exercise equipment manufacturing company down there. Many people may have heard of this company. It's called Diversified Products, DP, Fit for Life. If you're older than 50 years old, I'm quite confident you had one of their pieces of equipment in your house. They made everything from Orbitron weights to treadmills to air bikes and this and that. And so I worked there for 2 years waiting for Julie to graduate. And I tell you, it was probably the most enlightening experience I'd ever had because this was a gigantic company where we had at least 10 or 15 assembly lines. And these were pretty impressive assembly lines, back in, 1990, 1991, before robotics came out and so forth. But anyway, so she graduates from Auburn. Like anybody else, we moved back to Atlanta because, in my opinion, at the time, it was very difficult to make a living in South Alabama. So I came back to the big city, just basically threw my hat in the ring, going through the newspapers back then, as I can age myself. The internet was not really quite around yet. So I found a job and, interviewed at a few different places and ended up and started my airline career, if you will, with a big cargo airline called Emory Worldwide. Emory Air Freight had been around for several years, and I took a job there as an account manager in charge of the East Coast of the U.S., handling their international air freight. That sort of fit the bill because I graduated with a degree in international business, foreign language trade, Spanish. So that was pretty cool. I'm like, all right, well, I'm dealing with imports, exports, customs brokerage and all of this. And, I cut my teeth there for 5 years. That was a more enlightening experience because I was selling a good product, but it was, in my opinion, expensive. We provided the service, but it's a very competitive business. It's even more today because there's so many freight forwarders, not just the integrated carriers of, FedEx, UPS, and DHL. There's all these other people that are moving freight around the globe. But, we could talk about that supply chain mess that these people and all of us manufacturers have been dealing with forever. But long story short, Ben Reeves, he and I were in the same fraternity, and Ben got married to a lovely lady named Amy. And her father happened to own a company called Tug Manufacturing in Kennesaw, Georgia. Well, I ended up going to a Christmas party at her dad's house, Don Chapman, one night. And Don had heard, or he learned, that I worked for Emory Air Freight. At the time, Emory was a pretty darn good customer of Tug's. They had a hub in Dayton, Ohio, and an old colleague and friend of mine who we both know very well, who I believe was your first podcast, Brad Compton, was handling the Emory account up in Dayton, Ohio. And Brad, being the professional salesperson and successful as he has been all these years, had just sold, I believe it was 40 MH crew vans, basically where they took the back where the shaved tail, I think we call it too. And they basically cut it out and made it so they put 2 benches on each side and would take people out on the ramp back and forth to the aircraft, the crews and so forth. Well, I think that I may have sold Don that I had something to do with the operation or procurement or something at Emory. And next thing you know, he asked me to come work for Tug. And I get there and I'm like, God, I surely hope he doesn't expect me to get any business because I don't know anybody in operations. I don't know anybody in procurement. I was in sales trying to sell the air freight. But a long story short, I guess we could say that Ben got me in this business. I'm forever grateful to him. I've made so many incredible friendships. I spent 8 years at Tug Manufacturing. It was Tug Manufacturing. Then it was Stewart and Stevenson Tug. And then come 2005, it was time for me to depart. I decided to take a big risk. And, they always say the bigger the risk, the higher the reward. And I think that somewhat applies in this case because I got recruited away to go work for a French company where I work now, Charlatte America in Bluefield, Virginia. So I was going to go from the big city of Atlanta up to central Appalachia. And it took me a while. They told me, no, Rob, it's not pronounced Appalachia, it's Appalachia. So I finally figured that out. Louis Galdiano was the president of Charlotte at the time, and he basically met with me and offered me the job. And I saw that the industry was trending towards electric vehicles. even though it was a limited market at the time. It was still a market that, in my opinion, had been untapped. And some of the sales management they had at Charlotte at the time, or previous to me, made it pretty easy for me just to come in there and, you know, get out in front of the customer and make the calls. And, you know, they just weren't selling or marketing their vehicles correctly, because Charlotte had a superior product to its competition. And, you know, the rest is pretty much history. Come September, I will have been there 18 years.
Wow. So
It's,
at that time,
I had hair back then, man.
oh my, it's a long time ago, man.
Yeah, it was.
So at the time when you left to go to Charlotte, what was their product line? Was it the T137, or was it at that time, was it the 135 or something? And then did they have the belt loader?
Yeah, so it was mainly just you know, the DC powered bag tractor, along with a DC powered full size belt loader.
Okay.
And you know, they had two large customers at the time, two of the legacy carriers, but they really weren't doing business with anybody else. So there was some low hanging fruit, and boy, you know, they say timing is everything, and I think my move to there was a perfect example of that.
Well, yeah, you've done incredibly well there, and it's more than just timing. I mean, you're obviously a great salesperson as well. So they converted the both the belt loader and the electric brag tractor to AC, I would say a couple of years after you got there. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is absolutely correct. It is, you know, and I know we'll talk about technology as we move through the podcast. Of course, I know that's something you want to talk about. But yeah, especially when we get to new products and so forth. As we move forward, we still only had one DC product here recently, and that was the intermediate belt loader. And that was one of those things, just, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we're finally going AC on it, even though it's one of our most dependable vehicles. Quite honestly, in the realm of electric vehicles, a belt loader is probably the best application, because you use, you know, so few amp hours in running a belt loader, at least the conveyor deck of a belt loader. So
now,
anyhow, yeah.
I have a random question for you here. Do you all have anti-collision on the belt loader?
Yes, sir, we do. We call it the Scout system.
Oh, when did that come out?
I guess 3 years ago, maybe. It
wow.
was shortly after IATA had, you know, come out and said that they would like for folks to put that on there. So yeah, we do provide it. Quite honestly, it's not something, we've been surprised that not many people have mandated it. And sitting back, it's like, well, we know the customers know their business. If they're not specifying it, you know, I'm not going to ask them to pay the X $1,000 to put it on there.
Yeah, and it's honestly one of these things where, so I have a car that has all the anti-collision stuff on it, but my wife's car does not. And I have a very hard time going from driving my car to then her car, because I'm used to the technology, right? So I know that my car is not going to get out of its lane and things like that. When I get into her car, I'm not paying as much attention, and then realizing like, oh, I'm out of my lane, because I'm so used to that. So I think it's like, a lot of it may be that, yeah, these airlines and things like that, they don't want their operators to get used to that technology. And then all of a sudden, because if they can't convert the whole fleet, right, that it's safer almost just to keep the fleet non-anti-collision, just for the simple fact that unless you can convert them all, don't convert any of them, type of mentality. It would be my guess. I don't know what your thought is on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And as we used to say back in the 90s, dittos rush. I know where you're coming from, you know, because I've got the same situation with an older car and a brand new car. And it definitely is something to get used to. I do not have a self-driving car, but I do have all those bells and whistles on it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the self-driving car either, but maybe one day.
Well, we are in GSE, you know, we don't make millions.
That's right. That's it.
But anyway, yeah, so I've been around airplanes for 31 years, and this industry has been so good to me. I've learned, so many things from so many CEOs that I worked for: Don Chapman, Mike Grimes, John Keating, Louis Galdiano, and even now my current boss, Bastien Deveau, from Charlatte Manutention. Just some background here. Charlatte is a company that is owned by the Fiat Group, and the Fiat Group is the French like the word group, and that one designator of that is that it's not a corporation, in that I can buy common shares. The Fiat Group is 231 companies in 170 countries, and Jean-Claude Fayat and Laurent Fayat basically are the shareholders, and we work for that family. And they own 70 companies with about 100 different subsidiaries, and Charlatte America is one of those companies. My president manages both locations. The only difference is the destination of the vehicle, how it's built, was CE spec or not. SE handles the P&L and the operations management of both our facility in Burgundy as well as in Virginia. So we're both called Charlatte. It's just, from the legal standpoint, we're Charlatte America and they're Charlatte Manutention. So as far as my responsibility goes, my sales territory is all of the Americas. So I can go from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and the Maritimes down to Lima, Peru, or Santiago, Chile. Oh, it's a gigantic area, and I got a few people that help me with it. But, most of our business is in the U.S. and Canada.
Okay. Do you all bring units over from Europe and sell them in the United States, or are you only selling units that are produced in the United States in the Americas?
Well, it's interesting. Technically, we have two-way traffic across the Atlantic.
Okay.
I think we're the only manufacturer that builds like vehicles in both locations. However, there are right now two products that we've been selling for years. The TE208, which is like a little gate tugger, if you will, that'll tow 8 tons. I love that vehicle because it might be the most reliable vehicle that we sell. And it's really, I love it because we don't have much competition. We have zero competition there.
So
find something.
Is that a smaller baggage tractor, just less weight and just smaller footprint?
That's exactly right. We used to market it at one time, 2/3 the size, two-thirds the price of a T137.
Wow.
So that one they still build over there because we sell a ton of those to all the auto manufacturers over in Europe.
Oh, that makes sense.
And even though I'm selling it to 3 different airlines here on this side of the pond, we just haven't gotten up into those big numbers over 100 to actually, assemble them here. It's easier for us just to build them there and put them all in an ocean container and bring them over. The other vehicle is the CFB 2000, the Charlotte Flatbed 2000. So I talked about the MH earlier. Great product that Textron builds. It's very similar to the Textron MH, except it's electric. It's a little more narrow and it's longer. But anyway, it's got a real flat battery in it, like underneath some panels, and the deck on the back. You can put like 4,000 pounds on it, and you can use it with baggage rails around it. You can put a baggage cart on the back with a shelf in it and curtains, the whole deal. It'll still pull, it still has 3,000 pounds of power bar pull, even with the weight on that deck. So it is another product that is very unique to us. We're seeing a lot of interest in that vehicle right now.
Yeah, I bet, because it's narrow. It can pull a lot. Seems like there'd be a lot of applications for that.
Yeah. And just like any other high-speed vehicle, it'll do 25 miles an hour. But
wow.
In many applications, thank goodness for the Curtis controller, you can dial back the speed. If you have a speed limit of 10 or 15 miles an hour on a ramp, we can make it that's the top speed, if you will.
Well, that's incredible. So that's still being built in France, along with was it the 208?
Yep, the T208. The 8 on the end of that stands for that it will tow 8 tons. It only goes 8 miles an hour, but it'll tow basically 16,000 pounds. It is just such a unique little vehicle, turns on a dime, and when you see it, you can tell why. But just like all of our other vehicles that we build that are electric, even though internal combustion is still part of our business too, 80% of it's electric, they all have a version of the same Charlatte rear axle. And the reason that
is this a big proprietary axle?
Yes, sir, it is.
Gotcha.
We build that in our factory in Burgundy, France. And it's it's probably 50% of the reason I went to take the job at Charlatte, because it has been so dependable. They've been building it since the early 90s. It's the same design, whether it goes in the 208, the belt loader, or the T137, it's the Charlatte axle. We designed the front axle. We have another supplier build that for us, but that rear axle and its reliability is what makes our product line, almost bulletproof.
That's so funny that you said bulletproof, because I think I've heard other people in the industry describe the axle as bulletproof, and I was going to say, so it's basically bulletproof. So that's pretty good. Yeah, but I've heard stories about this axle. So apparently it is something that you all have that nobody else has, and makes your units very reliable, and it's the reason that you sell a lot of electric tractors.
Yeah, we sure do. And the problem is, though, electric vehicles, unlike the internal combustion ones where you got to replace an engine here and you got all that maintenance with internal combustion. The problem with electric vehicles is they last too long. If you take care of an electric vehicle, you're not going to sell as many, because you can get 15 to 20 years out of them out on the ramp. I mean, there's Huff pushbacks and some old Stewart Stevensons and pay movers and all those guys out there, but pushback's different. They're not working a whole lot, and they can last 30 years plus. But for something that's running around the ramp all day, the last for 15 to 20 years is pretty darn impressive.
So speaking of pushbacks, do you all offer a pushback or an electric pushback?
We have played in that arena in the past, and, we've only sold a few handfuls of those. We would like to be in that business, but it is just, it's difficult because we don't buy enough from the axle manufacturers, because we would not make that axle. That would not be a Charlatte rear axle that goes in that. And we currently do not have an axle manufacturer to supply us those. I'd like to be in that business because, last time I crunched the numbers, the price for one of those with the batteries that, would be the ballast on each pontoon on the right side is the same amount of money as an internal combustion one.
Yeah.
But, as grants drive our business and so forth, it's usually just the tractors and the belt loaders where they get all the, the emissions credits back, and not necessarily the pushback. So although there are some for that.
Okay. Yeah, because I think, as the industry moves towards electrification, which we can discuss, you would think that Charlatte would want to be able to offer like a full narrow body package, right? So that way you have all, the pushback, the belt loader, the baggage tractor, enough to support an entire operation. But I do understand that, I mean, if you don't buy very large quantities of these things, they can get super expensive, I imagine.
Yeah. And, the push from the airlines, if somebody came to me and said, "Rob, in 2 years, I see us buying 100 of these," we'd go back to the drawing board. And, we would redesign a vehicle to make it happen. But I just don't think the quantities are there today. That could be changing. But yeah, we're satisfied with our portfolio with not having one of those.
Yeah. So let's talk about electrification in GSE. So obviously, you've been selling electric tractors since the 90s. They've been out there. They are not, I wouldn't say they are the majority of tractors out there, but there's obviously a push from the industry to go more towards electric. What are your thoughts? Is that going to happen? Is there going to be, is every location going to go electric? Where do you all see that going?
It's, it has been fun to watch it grow every single year. I spent about 10 years on the advisory board at EPRI. It stands for Electric Power Research Institute. That was really eye-opening because that was sort of at the beginning of all of this. I think I was there around 2000, if that makes sense. I think I carried it over into I think I was there when I was with Brand X, and then I think I stayed on when I came over to Charlotte. I haven't been on it in many years. But back then, the state of California was basically paying my salary and keeping the lights on at Charlatte America because the Californians are the ones that started this whole thing. Not a huge fan of California. It costs a lot to live there and it's a long ways from home, but they started out with the memo of understanding, the California Air Resources Board, and they went hot and heavy on it. Next thing you know, all these different grants and so forth are popping up on the West Coast, and everybody started electrifying airports, from LAX to Burbank. But to answer your question, to give you an idea, I just told you back then, it was pretty much, the state of California with a little bit sprinkled in on the East Coast and this and that, but there wasn't a whole lot of money to get from the government. So if you did it, if you did go electric, you had the infrastructure and you were just smart enough to know to go electric and tractors and belt loaders because of the cost savings that's there. The ROI is higher on an electric vehicle than it is on an internal combustion one. And I'm sure you've seen all those studies and this and that, but I'm not going to sell you on that today. But to give you an idea, so the whole state of California, or at least the major airports there, they're making a push to go electric. Then you see the big cities, the SeaTac airport, both airports in Chicago, Atlanta, Philadelphia, all the hubs in Texas, Memphis, Denver, Dallas, Las Vegas. And here most recently, we've got Kansas City as a mid-size airport, as I might describe it. Vancouver and Toronto, this, everything's starting to really burst at the seams.
So you hear a lot of people talk about infrastructure at the airports, and that's the reason you don't see a lot of electric equipment at the airports is because the infrastructure isn't there. So are these grants also covering the infrastructure for these airports?
Well, there's different types of grants. Each airline is, they have an environmental department. And I guess I could just very simply say that, some environmental departments are more engaged with tech ops, customer service, or GSE, depending on how that airline manages their business through their different departments. Yes, the I word, if it weren't for infrastructure, I would be selling at least 100% more equipment than I sell right now. What happens is, and these are not things that happen overnight. It doesn't matter if it's the wealthiest state, the wealthiest county, every airport has its own challenges internally. And that could be from the airport management. It could be the state that they're in. It could be where they are with the federal government programs that are offered, the actual understanding of the grants, knowing the deadline of the grants are the big issue. But the main driver of the lack of infrastructure is the age of the terminals where they want to put in the fast chargers to charge these vehicles. Even up to today, the reason Europe has sold twice as many vehicles as me and my competition has here in the US is because they don't really use fast charging over in Europe. So if you're not using fast charging, you have to buy twice as many vehicles, right?
Yep.
Because you might not have time for 8 to 10 hours to, plug it up to a standard charger. Well, over here, if people are going to do it, they're going to make their best attempt to do it right. And to do it right is to spend the money and bring in the utility companies to help pay for this and that and the grants, but bring in the experts, that sell the fast chargers and build a terminal or find the power in an existing building that's got 480 volt, 30 amp, three phase behind the wall. So you can put in these fast chargers that will take an electric vehicle for 20 to 80% in 2.5 hours. And that's on a flooded lead acid battery. Okay. Those numbers are improving as the technology in batteries come along too. But anyhow, it's all driven by the age of the terminal. Who is going to pay? Okay. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten almost to the finish line with an airline and or a city, and all of a sudden the project gets called off. And this is mostly in some smaller cities.
Yeah.
And the reason it gets paused or delayed is because the city and the airport thought the airline was paying for it, and the airline thought the city and the airport were paying for the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's a true story, but it happens. Again, it all comes back to sales 101, communication. But we have seen that improve greatly recently. And I think this Kansas City project, I can't speak for everything that went on behind the scenes, but I spoke at a conference, an electrification conference in Long Beach, California, a handful of years ago, and met with all kinds of different utility companies and so forth that had a stake in this Kansas City project. And in my opinion, it sounds like they got it done before they expected to. And today we're shipping vehicles for multiple airlines to Kansas City.
All right. Well, no, I appreciate you explaining the infrastructure deal to me. I just have another quick question for you here. So what do you find to be like the most challenging aspect of your job?
Oh goodness. Right now, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, let's speak in present day. It would have to be having enough flexibility to travel and be in front of the customers face to face. That is what I'm not able to do enough of, that I want to do more of, because this business is all about relationships. Yes, you have to have the solid product, but you have to have that interaction with the customers. And, with more management duties, the growth of the company, spending more time in Virginia. I live half time in Atlanta, and I've got a townhouse in Virginia. It's just absorbing more of my time. And you know me pretty well. It's we have more fun on the road than we do at a factory, right?
That's for sure.
So that's the challenging part, is trying to get back on the road and do what I do. Being the face of Charlatte, yes, I do have people that work for me that are doing a fine job out there in the field. But doing this for so many years, I got a lot of friends that I've known for 25 years since I got into GSE specifically, and I miss those guys and gals. We have a good time.
Yeah. The travel definitely got cut back during COVID and all that. And so now just trying to get back out there. But on that topic, I think this would be a good time. So do you have like a memorable story or like about a project you worked on, specifically in GSE?
Yeah. One thing I was going to say too, if I can just come back.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I've been spending so much time in Virginia during COVID, since COVID, is the supply chain mess. Do I think it's getting better? Yes. Are my customers frustrated? Of course they are. If somebody tells you they're not having supply chain issues, that's an OEM and GSE, I would bet they're probably not telling you the whole truth. But right now, my biggest challenge, besides the selfish challenge and what I think is good for the company and keeping those relationships alive and working with the customers to find solutions, is balancing the supply chain as it relates to those components going into finished goods versus replacement and spare parts. You can't have it both ways. It's just how we fraction it up. We're struggling with that all the time. Do we make money on parts? Yes. Do we make money on vehicles? Yes. But, sometimes, many, many times, the same people that are buying the finished goods, the T137, CBL 2000s, T208s, whichever of our numerous products that we have, I can't get them the large number of finished goods that they're trying to buy and provide them with all the spare parts and replacement parts. So that's one of the things we've been trying to juggle internally. I think it's getting better as each month goes by, but there are some crazy things that we just can't get our hands on. That balance there is what's interesting, because the customer needs to put the vehicles back into service, that they're ordering the parts for, which is my vehicle. But then again, they want to know where the new ones are too. So that's probably the real challenge of the OEM itself.
Yeah, I would think
that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And, our previous guest that was on the podcast said the same thing. I mean, we're all dealing with the challenge of the supply chain at this moment in time, and hopefully it is getting better. And I bet that is a difficult thing to juggle on what you're gonna supply, right? Whether it be spare parts or the line, and they want both, quite honestly. And as a customer, you'd want both, but with the current state of the industry and the supply chain, sometimes that you're going to make that difficult decision. And I'd say that it's probably a really challenging part of your job at this moment in time.
Yeah, but that's what they pay us for, right, big guy?
That is it. So now I'm going to go back to my question here. So do you have like a memorable story about a project you've worked on?
About 50.
About only about 50 projects you've worked on? I didn't know if you had a good story in the chamber here you wanted to talk about.
It's interesting. We'll go with a G-rated story.
Yeah, those are always the best.
G-rated. But the one I'm most proud of, I speak Spanish. Some might consider it fluent. Some might consider it trash. However, I can travel anywhere and get by. And, I would think any dialect, Spanish is the second most common language around the world. But I have my sales manager, his name is Todd Goins, and he's been with the company. I hired him 1 year after I arrived there, and he is fluent in Spanish. He worked for a big air cargo carrier down in Venezuela. He worked for a charter airline down in Miami. He's actually from Bluefield, Virginia, ironically, is when I did the search and found him. It was through that old company, Monster. I don't know if they're still.
I remember them. Yeah.
No idea where he lived. He ended up living in the dang town. I thought I was going to have to get somebody from Charlotte or Bristol or Roanoke or, even Washington, D.C. And here this guy comes to work for me, and he's been managing the sales for me. And he's been in charge of Latin America, because he is absolutely fluent in Spanish. He speaks fluent in his house. His lovely bride is from Venezuela. And one of the first things we did in the first 5 years I was there, the most memorable, besides bringing on the legacy carriers and the very large discount carriers and all those big wheels up here in, the United States, he started poking around down in Latin America. And if you're familiar with NAFTA and everything else, Chile is the country that's probably the most like the United States when it comes to standards of living and so forth. And he started working with some ground handlers down there that were doing some business with LAN at the time. Now they're called LATAM. And these ground handlers, I think there were two different ones, but long story short, we all know, what the geography of Chile is from north to south, the long skinny border on the ocean there. But once it was all said and done, after a few years, we had accomplished putting electric tractors on 10 different airports in the country of Chile. And that is probably it's in my top 10 of success stories, but I think it's unique to show that we've gone in markets that other people haven't and been successful. And that's why, did the foreign language make a difference? Heck yes, it did. But anyway.
That's super impressive.
My favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
People were like, gosh, I didn't know there were 10 airports in Chile. Well, we're Americans. Me, you, and everybody else, we're ignorant to geography. I mean, unless you've been to Chile or whatever, you're not going to know there's 10 airports. So, but there we know there's always Santiago, the New York City of Chile. But no, it's just really cool to see how many different spots on the map we've delivered electric vehicles to, whether it be a belt loader to Dubuque, Iowa, or to some tractors to Kalispell, Montana. It's not just the big airports in the big cities.
Yeah, and I would say that you and Todd are pretty unique in the fact that you can speak Spanish fluently, and from that part of the country. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and if I were getting in the GSE business, I think that's something that we should talk about. Maybe that it was on your list. If somebody wanted to enter this industry and they were an individual, the first thing I'd tell them is to work for a family company. That's my opinion. I did that with Don Chapman, and I've done that with the Fayette Group. Jean-Claude and Laurent Fayette have owned Charlatte since 1999. So there has been no change in, the senior management. We basically worked with autonomy. They let us do what we're going to do, and we've been profitable really ever since we opened the doors in 1993. This is our 30-year anniversary, so we're very excited about that.
Well,
but
congratulations.
that'd be my number one. Hey, thank you very much. I'd tell somebody to go work for a private company, but then to come back from what I said a minute ago, if you're going to work for an international company, especially one like the Fayette Group or any other Fortune 500, learn a foreign language. It would not be easy for someone my age, but if there was a young person coming into the GSE business, I'd tell them to learn a foreign language. And specifically, since it is the second largest in the world, I'd say Spanish. It is pretty funny when I tell people, I work for the French, and they say, "Oh, you speak French?" I said, "No, I speak Spanish." They're like, "Well, what's that all about, Ron?" I'm like, "Well, French is very similar to Spanish. However, when you get over here in the Americas, unless you're in Quebec or Haiti, there's not going to be anybody that speaks French."
That's right. And that's what I studied in high school was French, and I made a huge mistake.
Well, it's amazing how similar the languages are, but then again, how different they are just because they're separated by that mountain chain and that little country of Andorra up on the top of the mountain there. But
your geography is fantastic, by the way. I wish I knew half the amount of geography that you do. This is super impressive. But you were international business, so I imagine that, So how's the industry changed over the years? Is there any future trends you see in the GSE sector?
Yeah, there is, but I want to come back to that other question. I just wanted to expand on, back again, trying to help the people that are coming into the GSE.
Oh, yeah, let's hit up those people. Let's do that.
These kids graduating from, whether it be University of Georgia, Alabama, Nebraska, USC, whatever. Besides trying to find a family company that you can work with, learning a foreign language, I think that bigger is not always better. Everybody, the Europeans like to call it a full liner. There's something a little bit lost in translation there, and that's fine. But companies in this industry, it doesn't matter how big you are or how many products you offer, you're never going to have everything that everybody needs on the ramp. If you have air starts, GPUs, belt loaders, this, that, and the other, you're not going to have tail stands or tow bars. There's always going to be something that you don't sell. But you need to find a company that's really good at what they do, what they focus on, and is at the top of their game. And that's what I've done. And then you go out and you build the relationships out of these people, the 500 people I was talking about before. And you create those relationships and turn them into, let's call them loose partnerships or very good friendships. You go in and you see somebody and they're like, I'm talking to them about all our vehicles. And they say, "Rob, we need a new tow bar manufacturer, a new vendor." Well, give my friend Scott Kennedy at Hall Industries a call. If I'm going to see a small regional airline and, they need some small stairs or something like that, call Chad at Clyde. So that's just something that I would throw out there. Are we envious of the really big guys at times? Sure. But when the rubber hits the road, it's nice to work for a smaller company where you can control, supervise, and even advise senior management what you're doing and be on site where they're building the product day in and day out. If you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 factories on every continent, and you're selling something to somebody, it's back when I was selling air freight. I could control the guy driving that truck up to the dock in Amsterdam, whether or not he was going to actually get it on the airplane, ship it to JFK, get it down to Dayton, and have it delivered in Columbia, South Carolina. You have no control. And that's what I really like about working for a small company.
I would have to agree with you. So I work for Sasser Family Company, which owns Exceed, and I've so much enjoyed working for a family company. And we kind of have the same, I mean, speaking generally, we have the same type of mentality you do, right? Which is go to the people who, you know, what I'm trying to say is we buy the best products from the best manufacturers. And that's the reason we buy a lot of Charlatte electric tractors, because you all are fantastic at that product. And we can kind of pick and choose what manufacturers we use for what pieces of equipment to provide our customers with, you know, with the best pieces to fit their operation. So very much agree with all those points that you make there.
Yeah. And to that point, I know it's going to sound like I'm kissing your butt, but
please go ahead.
You know,
now you piqued my interest. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, and anyway, you asked me, you know, what's the most challenging part of my job? Well, we could say, I could be very sarcastic and say, getting the customer to pay their bills, pay that invoice. You know, you're net 30. Come on, you know, we're out 61 days. Where's my money?
Yeah.
You know, the DSO just it ravels out of control. And I have seriously told my senior management, you know, or my equals, or whatever you'd like to call them, that start to panic. My VP of finance, this or that. You know, we're selling a lot of equipment to Exceed, you know, and this is a new line. And I don't know, Rob, are we comfortable with this? I'm like, yeah. I said, because they're set up like we are. I said, Exceed is its own company, but they have a parent that is the largest manufacturer of rail cars in the world. Do I have that right?
We do not manufacture. We lease. We lease all of them. And you're right, though. I mean, they've been in business since 1928, and right. We have a very long history. I think we lease every kind of vehicle that's, you know, we lease cars, we lease trucks, we lease rail. So Sasser is very much in all those industries.
Yeah. So I tell my management, I'm like, I'm not ever worried about it. You know, Exceed not having the money. They're going to pay their bills because you do have the Sasser structure behind you, and that just makes a huge difference. And so you and we're in the same comfortable position.
Yeah, and from my understanding, I think we pay like net 15 or something. We pay very quickly, so I think that works out for everybody. So how has the industry changed?
Well, I think if you look at it from a very macro perspective, you know, I think you're going to say, well, it's pretty simple. It's the merger of all the legacy carriers, the large carriers. They've changed some things. I mean, I remember years ago, I'm down in Houston, Texas, and I hear something about Houston and Chicago and all this. And next thing you know, they've worked out this fantastic deal. And the TWAs of the world, the America Wests, the Northwests, we won't go back as far as Eastern, but, you know, there were just so many carriers that were buying all this equipment, and you almost got a little bit nervous. You're like, well, I'm doing business with those guys, but not these guys. They're merging. Are we going to keep that business? So that is really what I think changed over the years, and really was the vehicle that got GSE accelerated, is because all of these airlines merged. As far as the trends that we're seeing, we talked about DC to AC earlier.
Yep.
We played with the hybrid thing. We've done hydrogen fuel cells. There's lithium ion batteries. There's lithium polymer. And now there's sodium ion, which I think sounds pretty cool, because we know that there's hardly any danger if you're using sodium ion. So we're looking forward to proving that. I think that just one of the business trends overall, not just in the GSE sector, but in life in general, is the LinkedIn tool. I think that we've had some success with that. And it's that 500 people I keep talking about again. Well, if you go to mine or anybody else's, you're going to see we have 500 connections. Yeah, now are those 20 people or 50 people trying to sell me and you something? Maybe. But I think that's been a useful tool as well.
I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. We do a lot on LinkedIn, or at least we're trying to, and it really helps to have those connections and let them know, maybe you have some products available that are quicker, on demand, ready to go. So it really helps out letting them know that. So what is Charlatte working on right now? What are your new products? Any new innovations?
Well, a couple trade shows ago, I think we were one of the first GSE companies to come out with an autonomous tractor. That was gaining a lot of momentum, and then COVID hit. And right as we came out of COVID, nobody was going to spend $150,000 on a bag tractor, even if it didn't need a driver. There's just too many unknowns there, and I think just people aren't comfortable with it yet. I think it's coming. We've built a handful. We've sold a couple, but that is something that it's going to be on our product offerings, but it's not at the top of the list. What I will tell you is at the top of the list is cargo tractors that are electric, the T137 and the 4,000 to 5,000 pound drawbar pull range. We want to build a cargo tractor. So we're going to be showcasing at the Las Vegas show a vehicle that tows 60,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
This has some interest from many different prospective clients around the world. We're going to put a very large battery in it, so it can run a long, long time. And if you're going to ask me, what's the next biggest thing in GSE, or one of the most significant growth opportunity in the GSE sector is, it's electric cargo operations. Okay. All these airports and airlines, they've been buying vehicles for the ramp. You got to move the people, you got to move the bags. Okay. As I said, when I was in the air freight business, Rob, what was the one thing you really liked about the air freight business? And I think a flight attendant would tell you this, or anyone that works for a passenger airline, is that when you're in the cargo business, the packages don't talk back. They can't complain.
Yep.
So that's a nice thing. But the ramp is pretty much caught up. I mean, and they're gaining all this momentum with all the different cities and the grants and everything we talked about before. But the cargo folks are in different buildings, which brings back the infrastructure work. So they've got to get the infrastructure, and they're on a whole different budget than, airport operations, or at least I would presume that at most airlines anyway, depending on the size. But the electric cargo tractor is going to be the next thing, because the cargo operations, as the airlines continue to make money, they're going to get that funding. And the sky's the limit. People don't realize, in these gigantic hubs, all over the world, that all of those vehicles with those big diesel engines in them to have the 6, 8, 10,000 pounds of drawbar, they're going to be replaced by electric vehicles. A little bit of the challenge there is coming up with the ballast, and that's just a matter of R&D and so forth. But I think that's where the big growth opportunity is, really do.
So with this new 6,000 pound tractor, will this be on the same frame as the T137, and will it have the proprietary axle that we had discussed?
It is going to have the proprietary axle. However, it's the next generation of our CT5 series. If you look back at the CT5, that stands for Cargo Tractor 5,000 pounds drawbar. There's a very large cargo airline that came to us and said, "Hey, Rob, we love the T137. We use it all over the world. However, when we want to drop a dolly or pick up a dolly as we sort during the night or the day, it sure would help if the operator were in a rear cab design so they could reach back, grab the tether, pull the hitch up, and drop the load right there and drive off.
Yep.
So they asked us to basically build a rear cab design electric tractor. Well, what we did may sound pretty simple, even though my chief engineer has been at Charlatte, since inception 30 years ago. To keep it simple, stupid, what we did is we added more ballast. But in our vehicle, one of the selling points of the T137 is you open up the trunk and everything is there. Okay. You got the whole panel, you got the Curtis controller, you got your power steering pump motor. And all we did was we moved everything from the trunk of the vehicle and put it in the front of the vehicle. And then we moved the driver compartment to the rear, added more ballast, and that got us to 5,000 pounds. So it is a totally different frame than the T137. And the CT6 is going to look like the CT5, just a little bit different. It's going to have some more, it has lines on it. It's actually a pretty nice looking cargo tractor. And we'll be rolling that out at the Las Vegas show in September.
Man, that sounds nice. So will people be able to drive it there? Is it going to be in the demo area or just at the booth? Are they going to have a demo area? I don't even know.
They are going to have a demo area, and I would bet that's probably where we're going to put it.
Okay.
Along those same lines, as far as what Charlatte is doing, and trust me, it has not been easy with getting all the bodies to come back to work and hiring new people and everything else. That's not just, in the world of manufacturing and assembly and everything from painting to welding, but it's also on the engineering side. A lot of engineers, where are they? I could probably use another one right now, but we found a nice balance to still be able to create these new products, even during the COVID catch up, as I call it. And right now, what we have done is there's two other projects, and one of those is taking our electric tractors to a higher voltage. Right now, everything is 80 volts, okay, and 80 volts is fine. However, there are some customers that are demanding higher voltage in their vehicles to make them more compatible with their on-road vehicles, and they can charge them at the same place at the same time, and it all makes sense. So that is one of our engineering projects that's going on behind the scenes. Is that a very difficult project? No, it's not. It's just a matter of finding the components and the time to do it. But it is on paper, and that's going to be showcased as well in the future. But one thing that I do have that was at the Paris show is what we call a PE80. That's Papa Echo 80. That is a vehicle that is not quite the Charlatte flatbed, but it's heavier than a burden carrier. Burden carrier being the little ones you see on the golf cart, or you might see over in the provisioning area somewhere at an airport. And it's right in the middle. It's priced more than the burden carrier, but it's not near as much as the full-size flatbed electric that we sell. And we think we got a real winner there. It's going to be at the show, and it's basically here I'll say it again, it's a bulletproof.
There you go.
Burden carrier is what it is. I mean, it's typical Charlatte, design. It's steel all around. You can run something into it, and it's going to be less than the cost of a T137 actually.
So was it the PE80 and the T6? Will they both be manufactured at your facility in the United States here?
The CT6E will be in the beginning, but the P80 is
the P80. That's right.
Yeah, the PE80.
Oh, is it?
E just stands.
Okay.
Yeah, E just stands for electric. I wish I had a chance to name these things. I would have given it a really cool name, like some kind of wild animal or something.
Yeah, they really need to give you that opportunity. I'll talk to whoever you need me to talk to.
Yeah, they cougar and lynx and the rest of them.
That's right.
Taken, but they came out with a name for this darn thing before they asked me about it. But anyway, we've got two of those right now. We're bringing one to the U.S. to demonstrate with one of our customers, and that's something you got to be careful with too, because if you got something really hot, they all want a demo, and it's hard for my guys to convince me, oh, we need 4 demos. Well, that's 4, that's 4 assets that are out in the field not making any money.
Yep.
But yes, that we plan to build that one here too, because we believe that the demand is going to be so high for it. And you look at those things. I mean, of course, they're not near the quantity of a bag tractor or a belt loader, or especially not even a forklift, but they do exist on every airport, and there's a big market for that. And that's what we're going to be bringing to the Las Vegas show as well.
Nice. Well, that'll be great. There's a lot of new things to check out from Charlatte at the GSE Expo, so that'll be a lot of fun. So
it's
I have a couple.
It's pretty impressive that we're able to get this done during post-COVID, when lead times are where they are and everything else, that I can keep some engineers focused. We're very proud of that.
Yeah, you went into development during the slowdown, but I think that, if I remember correctly, that you all kept building units during COVID, and then they were gone instantly. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, sir. We had an old friend in the industry that basically kept more of our people employed than we should have. Let's say we had to furlough many employees, just like anybody else did. But yes, we stayed open. We remained profitable because we were building 100 T137s for one of our largest customers. And we can't be more grateful to them. And it's something we'll never forget. It's a great partnership we have with that airline.
Yeah. And I mean, you built your bread and butter and you kept innovating, and you're still here today because of it.
Yeah. And if we could just get our suppliers to keep up, I mean, this electric tidal wave that's coming, I don't think all of us are going to be able to build as many as the industry is going to want, because, they all want them yesterday.
Yeah, of course.
And that's just because of the planning processes of, different finance departments and the other drivers behind the curtain.
I mean, honestly, that's where Exceed's been able to kind of come in, just because, I remember, and I was telling Brad this on the last podcast, which is when I first started, you come in every day and they would tell you, oh, lead times are 6 to 8 weeks. Now you come into that office and no matter what manufacturer you're working for, they're easily 6 to 8 months. I mean, it's completely changed the industry, and Exceed has been able to, buy up a lot of equipment and inventory it. So if you have a quick startup, if you're a ground handler or an airline, then, we can provide that equipment on a lease and get people going, because these lead times are just, currently with the supply chain and the demand, are a lot longer than they used to be.
Yeah. And I know that your senior management's kicking yourselves because, of course, the hindsight's 2020, and I think everybody's crystal ball was running low on batteries. But I mean, just think if Exceed had bought 100 vehicles, I still could have built those 100 in addition to the ones I was building for my friends in Texas.
Yeah.
But, I know you guys are just sitting there thinking, my goodness, if we'd just taken that risk and gotten those, because, I mean, you guys are with the product, and you and your team from Carla all the way over and up. I mean, everybody's such a professional there. Even working with my people, my sales coordinators, we just added another one too. Her name is Emily Jesse. They can't say the best things. I mean, they do say the best things about working with your folks. And like I said, we know when we get an order from Exceed that it's going to be solid. You're going to be reasonable with us. When we give you the lead time, you understand the business. That's what's so important. Yet so many people that have been around a while, they do know the difference, between a tractor and a belt loader. I know I've used that reference before, but you wouldn't believe how many people that don't.
We have a lot of experience on our team. Yep. And we love dealing with Todd, obviously. He's fantastic as well. So I know you brought him up before, but yeah, it's worth mentioning how great Todd is. What a great guy you got on your team.
And, we've got Troy on the West Coast, and, he brings a very specific skill set to our team, because he was on the other side of the desk for 25 years.
That helps. Yeah.
the regional airline he worked for was different than any others. And that was, he was putting electric vehicles into cities that you I've never even heard of. Well, maybe I have.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. I was just going to bring that up. Maybe you have.
But yeah, all over, Idaho and North Dakota and Washington State and Oregon and all these other places. But what he was doing, he actually helped us design what we call the CBL 150E. And that is the intermediate belt loader that has a 20-foot deck on it. And it's the 48-volt model. And the way he and my engineering department designed it was, well, yeah, fast charging is wonderful, but what if I buy this for one of my hubs and I can fast charge it, but then all of a sudden I have a need for something in Bozeman, Montana. And we say, well, it's 48 volts. It's a battery that you can take from 20 to 80% pretty quickly off a 110 charge in the wall overnight. And in those cities, we know they're not hubs, so we know they're not flying airplanes at night. So what we did is we put the fast charging plug on there. If they had a fast charger, well, they did have a fast charger in the hubs. And then when they sent it to that outstation, as we all call them, they were able to use that same exact asset because it had a cord on a reel and they could plug it in the wall. And you need no infrastructure for that. So that's one of the things that he taught us and continues to be more of a solutions expert than anything else. And that's why we're so fortunate to have him on our team, because he can see it from the other perspective.
Yeah.
You and I haven't been on that side of the desk, and he sometimes helps us understand how the different processes work, when it comes to finance and purchasing and, the tech ops piece and so forth. So, but no, he helped design that, and it's been a big winner for us. And what we're doing with that vehicle right now is, it's probably my fault because I did not market it as well as I should have. But there's a lot of airlines that think they need a full-size belt loader. And if they're flying all narrow bodies, and especially if it's a 737, you don't need a full-size belt loader. What's the door sill height on one of those things? It's very low. And with a 20-foot deck with all the electric gadgets on it that the full-size one has, why spend all that money on a full-size when you can do it with an intermediate belt loader?
Sounds like
easier to maneuver.
Sounds like that thing needs to be in Vegas as well, man. It sounds like a great product.
Yeah, I haven't checked with Adam and Emily on how much square footage we bought. I know it was sizable, but we're making those decisions by the end of this month of what we're going to take.
So is that
one of those reasons?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of those reasons we got to make those decisions is because when I build those vehicles, they're going to take slots.
Yeah,
for vehicles that I could be selling finished goods assets to, for a customer that needs their things yesterday and don't want to wait that 6 and 8 months that you mentioned a moment ago.
Well, that's a really interesting product. So that belt loader, is that quite a bit cheaper than the larger belt loaders that we're used to? I think it was the CBL 2000. Is that, do I have my numbers correct?
You're absolutely right. And thank you for having it correct. Again, I'm going to go back. I know I used this before, but it's 2/3 the size and 2/3 the price. It's sort of like that T208 versus T137. But where I think that you benefit in this area is the price of the battery.
Okay.
I'm only going to speak. I'm only going to speak from the flooded lead acid side, but you can get a 415 amp hour battery in there, 48 volts with only 24 cells, a heck of a lot less expensive than you can the big ones that go in the electric bag and cargo tractors. So that's a piece there too. And as I mentioned before as well, unless someone is driving a belt loader, the traction motor, that is what is going to eat all of the amp hours out of the battery. However, if you have the regenerative braking set high enough, it will push some amps back into that battery. But if you just work it in, let's say, a 3-gate zone, and you're just driving it from one diamond to the other and going to that door and slowly driving it up the door, we can crank that thing back with the electronic controller to go a half a mile an hour as it approaches in the airplane. So you really, some people will look at it and say, I don't even need an approach system because, it ain't even going to get there fast enough.
Well, that's a super interesting product. I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think I was aware of that product, and it seems like a great option for carriers who are only, have narrow bodies in their fleet.
Yeah, and and I think that we're all learning something. It's been on the market for a while, but I'll take the blame on that one, not marketing it to every airline.
Hopefully, we're doing it right now.
Yeah, and it's it's got front brakes. It's got a rear suspension on it, so you don't get stuck in the snow to where one wheel just spins and spins. It's safe. It's like I said, you really wouldn't notice driving it, that it's that much smaller because it does have a 20-foot conveyor deck. Now, see, our full-size one has a 25-foot conveyor deck. I believe our major competitors have 24, and that really probably does the job on an A380 even. But yeah, we like that comfort zone of having that extra foot on the full size, but you definitely don't need it on anything with a wide body. And I think maybe what the airlines are doing is when they go to purchase a belt loader, and we can basically pitch this CBL 150E, it's like, okay, well, you might not want it in your hub operations because you never know if one of your, let's say, unseasoned ramp operators going to hop on it, drive it over to gate B18. And, that's, an area that a wide body's coming into, and, they grab the wrong belt loader because they do sort of look the same.
Yeah.
He or she is not going to be able to get the job done. However, if you're buying GSE for Omaha, Nebraska, let's say, I don't know of any wide bodies coming into Omaha. I don't know. I've not been there in a while. Maybe that's a bad example. So let's use Macon, Georgia then. You got narrow bodies coming in there, maybe a 717 or an A321. You can buy that GSE specific to that city. And that the wide body is not going to be coming in where you can use that CBL 150E. Now, the airlines may argue, we're always moving our stuff around, and I get that and understand that because the schedules change and everything else where they try to figure their business. But yeah, I think they can manage both fleets, save some money. And again, if it's electric, once you train your employees, people love to work on them, and they're easier to work on than internal combustion. That's been one of the exciting things all over these years is the training and enlightening some of these employees that are even older than me that have been scared to stand in a puddle of water and plug in an electric vehicles because they think they're going to get shocked.
Yeah.
Well,
that's hilarious.
Once they realize they are going to get shocked, and all they have to do is change a contactor and maybe, they're definitely going to have to change tires. That's one thing that happens with electric vehicles. But first 2 years, you're not really doing anything to an electric vehicle. And then when you are, your hands don't really get too dirty because you're not dealing with all the pieces that are, associated with an internal combustion vehicle.
Well, we only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask you one last question, and then we'll wrap it up here. So how does Charlatte stay ahead of the competition with product offerings and customer support?
Well, it's the solid product. We've had many people come after us. I'll say it. I think we're on top. I think I can back that up with our backlog. And when you're on top, it's just a little bit of a nervous place to be because you're never going to stay on top forever. But I'd love to be, but I'm a realistic person too. But you just have to focus on what the customer wants. Like I told you a minute ago, where I failed with the CBL 150E. Okay, we've sold many of them. I just think we could have sold more and given the customer more solutions. But the solid product, like I said before, in all those, the tractor, the belt loader, the T208, we make a lab truck and a water truck too, same axles. All we did was stretch the T137. I didn't even talk about those products. Those are for narrow bodies as well. That's one of the cooler products we make, and one of those definitely will also be in Vegas.
We'll have to cover that on the sequel to this podcast. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You know me, I'll talk forever. But anyway, all that being said, we have not changed too much. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, we went from DC to AC. We're using, a better power steering pump motor. We're trying to find the best electronics. The going from ABC controller over to Curtis has been a wonderful thing. But when I took this job almost 18 years ago, I did not taking this job was contingent on Charlatte bringing back one of my most valuable employees, and his name is Martin Locke. He works for me too, and he is my customer service manager, in charge of all field service as well as warranty and QC. Now, that may sound different that he's in charge of QC, but to have a successful manufacturing facility, the person that's over manufacturing, your production manager, cannot be over QC because he's going to try to get it out the door so we have those checks and balances.
I think you're right about that.
And Martin oversees, all three of those things. Okay, field service, warranty, and QC. And he has the best electrical mind when it comes to troubleshooting a vehicle. And I knew this almost 18 years ago. I told Louis Galdiano, I said, I'll take the job, but only if you bring Martin Locke back. Martin Locke was not terminated. He left Virginia to come down to Conyers, Georgia to work for Komatsu. Came down here. It's too hot for me. I'm going back to the mountains where it's cool. So it worked out. Martin and I came on board at the same time, and we have an incredibly mutual respect for each other, and our friendship is even stronger. Him and his people, along with just Adam Homeacre, answering his cell phone at home on a Thursday night or a Saturday morning. That is what sets us apart. When I came to work there, I said, guys, answer the phone and we will get the business, because there are many other companies that don't even do that. I know that sounds silly, stupid, and simple, but that's the truth.
Yep, I agree with that. Well, this has been great, man. I really appreciate you making time to come on here and talk to me, and we'll definitely have to have another one of these again, and just really appreciate the time.
Sure. Hey, round 2's fine for me. Maybe we visit after the Las Vegas show and we can talk about the successes of that.
There we go. I think that's a fantastic idea. Well, this has been Matt and Rob Lamb from Charlatte on the second GSE podcast. And thanks a lot, and we will talk soon.
All right, sir. Have a great day.
All right,
thanks again for the invite.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.